Hello and welcome everybody, both here and online. We'll start by getting some very nice words from by Ole Henrik Bjørkman Lifjell, who is member of the Governing Council of the Sami Parliament. Please.
Burbieje, Bores. Dear participants, I have the honor of opening and welcoming the people present here and the online participant to this panel discussion. The panel discussion that will highlight the importance of the subject of indigenous languages, technology and AI. To start with, let me express thanks to UNESCO and IDIL for putting these subjects on the agenda and promote visibility of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. Indigenous and minority communities face barriers as there is limited digital infrastructure and digital tools supporting use of our languages. Large tech companies may not see indigenous languages as profitable markets, and most online content is dominated by a handful of global languages. Many indigenous communities have oral traditions as cultural preservations. And lack of written language is making digitization complex and sometimes inappropriate without community consent. To overcome these barriers, we need to follow up with some following actions. We need to reduce language loss and revitalize indigenous languages. And the technological development for indigenous languages needs to ensure the importance of digital inclusion of indigenous languages also in digital platforms and AI. To promote policy is also something we need to do. Policy that use human rights principles and take accountability by use of national laws which will regulate and secure that indigenous communities have control and management of linguistic data collection that will benefit our own communities. AI-generated data innovations needs to be used in a non-discriminative way and respect indigenous cultures as well. We need to initiate for further collaborations and foster dialogues with big tech companies developers to include digital tools and language technologies for indigenous communities and speakers of indigenous languages. We need to remind each other that no language is too small to matter. And by elevating the challenges faced by indigenous and minority language communities, the communities are helping to pave a path toward a more equitable digital future for everyone. This panel debate is now opened, and I will encourage participants to establish connections to further exchange on the ongoing subjects raised under this Internet Governance Forum in the framework of the decade. So Gaitu, mu ovdste, olu Gaitu. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. My name is Sjur Nørstebø Mosagen, and I'm going to head this panel debate. In my daily life, I'm heading the Sami language technology work at the University of Tromsø. But today we're going to discuss barriers to indigenous language technology and AI uptake. And to help me with this, I have online David Castillo-Parra as a co-moderator for the online participants. He is an international consultant specializing in the promotion of multilingualism and currently serves as a member of the Secretariat for the International Decade of Indigenous Languages at UNESCO. He supports initiatives related to UNESCO's recommendation on multilingualism in cyberspace with a strong focus on fostering linguistic diversity in digital space. And David, maybe you would like to say a few words to present yourself.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Am I audible? I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes,
yes. Thank you very much. Hello. Good afternoon and greetings from Paris. Thank you, Jude, for the presentation. I am here from the Secretariat of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages at UNESCO. I'll be your online moderator today, so feel free to share your questions in the chat for those joining remotely, and I'll pass them to our panelists during the question and answer session. So thank you very much. I would like to pass the floor again to Jude to introduce our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. So yes, the panelists of today, on site we have Laisha Lobongo, who is a professor in health technology at the Department of Computer Science at the University of Tromsø, as well as an adjunct professor at the Sami University College, heading the Sami AI lab there. Online we have Outi Laiti from the National Audiovisual Institute of Finland. Outi is a computer game researcher, designer, and media education specialist, blending Sami culture with tech and education. Then again on site we have Valts Enstraits, who is a Livonian language activist developing digital tools for endangered languages, and he's working hard to shape the global digital inclusion policies. Then the last one on site is Aili Keskitalo, who is former Sami Parliament President and Indigenous rights advocate, now focusing on climate and just transition in Sápmi, working for Amnesty International in Norway. And finally, online, we have Kevin Chan, who is working at Meta on global digital policy to empower indigenous languages online. So that's our panelists for today. And before they are giving the word, I will say a few words on the topic of today. A starting point for this could be the global roadmap for multilingualism in the digital era that UNESCO is working on right now. They have a draft, and I'll quote a few sentences from the introduction. And remember, this is only a draft, but I think it's quite well formulated and goes to the heart of the topic of today. The global roadmap for multilingualism in the digital era provides a strategic framework for advancing language technologies, promoting linguistic diversity and multilingualism, and ensuring that all language users from all language communities can thrive in the digital age. Recognizing that language rights are integral to human rights, the roadmap aims to empower every individual to use and preserve the language in digital spaces. And the question today is, how is that, what's the actual status? What are the problems, what are the obstacles to actually do what they try to do in that part? And I will say a very few words on this. I've been working on language technology for the Sami languages for the last 20 years, and what we have seen is that the conditions for third-party languages, language technology, is very different from the first-party languages. So tools by Apple and Microsoft are treated very differently from tools by everyone else. So there are serious problems and for these tools, and often they are completely blocked. So independent localization, for example, is also not possible, or it might not be accessible, or if it's possible or accessible, it's not distributable. There are no platforms for providing translations to a piece of software without asking and getting permission from the original developer. And AI for indigenous languages and minority languages, that's a quite open question. It's open for probably many languages at the moment, but what you have seen so far is that bad output is kind of dominating for these languages. partly due to lack of data, but also partly because of lack of community involvement and lack of quality assurance and testing and evaluation. And major question in this discussion is how can one add one's own language to models from big technology? How can Sami or any indigenous language be added to the models from OpenAI, from Apple, from Microsoft, whoever? So, what we can say is that, as I said, we have been doing this for 20 years. We know that we know the technology, we know we can make it work on the technological level. What we cannot always do is deliver the tools in the apps and the systems and the context where users want to use them. That's the major problem. There are some examples here that we have experienced. I'm not going to spend much more time on that, but just one short one is spellers or proofing tools in online office applications. We have no possibility to install these tools using so that they behave as people expect them to. So the conclusion is that language technology for indigenous languages is often not possible, even though the technology is there and we know the technology. That's not the issue. Platform owners make life hard for most of the world's languages, but probably mostly without realizing it. I don't think that it's bad or bad intent behind it. It's just ignorance or negligence. So we need a new approach to how human languages are included and how they are approached in a digital world, and that's what we are going to discuss today. Then next up is Lars Ailo Bongo, please.
Maybe I can sit there.
Yep.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to give this talk. So I'm going to talk about future issues that may sort of hinder the use of indigenous language and indigenous AI. So AI, it has a great potential to bridge maybe the most important equity gap that sort of indigenous people are exposed to, which is the lack of experts in fields like medicine or education that has the language and cultural knowledge needed to sort of understand and provide equitable services. So for instance, in psychology, there are very few tests that are normed on indigenous minority languages, so the tests basically don't work well for indigenous people. So AI has the potential here to provide something where there is nothing there before. And also in education, AI has a great potential to provide adaptive learning, which is very important for minority language speakers because the level of language knowledge often has a greater variation than the majority languages. So there's a great potential for AI to sort of to bridge this equity gap. But then again, if indigenous peoples are excluded from using AI, then we are at the risk that this equity gap will just widen when the majority people start using AI for their health service and their educational service. It's very important that indigenous people are included in these new AI services. And luckily, this is regulated somewhat by law. So this is the quote from the EU Act, EU AI Act, which basically says that it's not allowed to discriminate minorities, such as indigenous people. So if there's an educational service or a health service provided, it should work as well for minority people as for the other people. However, there is one big challenge, which is that the indigenous people and other minorities are considered, data bottom is considered a special category, so this requires extra strong data protection, and this is, for instance, regulated by the GDPR law that says that it's not allowed even to collect this data unless you have a really good purpose. But also, the EU Act says that it is allowed to actually do this, to collect ethnical data, if the purpose is to prove that this AI works as well for indigenous people as for other minorities. And I just want to illustrate the dilemma that the indigenous people and also the AI providers are are facing. So let's say that we have, we want to do adaptive learning, which is maybe the application that is highest on the priority list of many indigenous people. So in order to do that, so AI can help, but to do that, you need to build this AI. And adaptive learning, one important component of that is cognitive tests, and this includes IQ tests. But if you want to do an IQ test that is equitable and works well for minority languages and cultures, you need to build that using the minority language and culture in mind. And that means you need to collect data from these minorities. And let's say that these are indigenous children, then you need to collect basically indigenous IQ tests from indigenous people. And this is, of course, very controversial because being an indigenous person myself, I know that we have historically been exposed for basically racist research where they sort of attempted to show that indigenous people are less intelligent. But I guess that if we want this to exploit all the opportunities that AI gives, including in the educational field, we must basically now start collecting this type of data. But luckily, we can do this in a much more ethical way than was done in the dark ages. So we can build some regulatory sandboxes that ensures that this data collection is done in an ethical and safe manner. And I think this is really important. We need to really start working on this in order to not leave the indigenous and other minority people and languages behind when the new AI tools are going to be used in important services as health and education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lars. Next one out is Outi Laiti. So, yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. Are my slides somewhere?
Is this one? Yours?
Probably we need to share them to Zoom.
They should be shared.
Yeah. I can see only myself.
Okay, on the screen shared in the stream here, it's both you and a slide.
Okay.
Yes, I can see it on mine too.
Okay, now I can see it. Thank you. I'm going to dive in, and thank you for having me as an indigenous woman. I come from the margins, and it's always a pleasure to be talking about computing. Programming has not been my passion. Games are, but since I was like 3 or 5 or something like that, I wrote my first line of code because I wanted to play games. Like Commodore 64 was a huge hit in 1980s. So when Finland introduced 10 years ago programming as a part of basic education, it was the starting point of doing programming research because we have Sami people living in North Finland and no one knew how to actually do this. The questions like how to teach programming in Sami languages, what are the cultural aspects of computing, they still exist after 10 years of educating children in basic education. And this change was huge. Like all teachers in all levels should teach programming, from crafts to gym teachers. They should all do it, and starting from grade 1. And I guess it has been 10 years, so we have like one generation of Sami basic education programmers ready, or maybe they're not. But anyway, can I get the next slide? And then the games. Nearly all the games I know that go under the digital Sami game umbrella, they are all for education, and in that language education especially. We call this the serious games. And then we have a lot of developing content in games. This can be like go under the same umbrella of Sami games when we are developing content in platforms like Second Life, Minecraft, and so on, which I call the Indigenous metaverse. It's growing rapidly, and most of these platforms are private owned. Then we have semi-private platforms like, for example, in universities. York University has own Indigenous metaverse in development, and Helsinki University did Serendip, which is not Indigenous, but it has some Indigenous content. I have done extended reality projects since 2018 in Sami Game Jam. And yeah, the major issue is that you cannot actually use extended reality in language education because we don't have the tools to have discussions in virtual reality if we don't use like voice over IP or something like that. And it's easier to use non-human centered design in games for multiple reasons, but ethical questions are one. For example, representation. If I'm doing non-playable or playable Sami characters, what should I represent and what are they talking if they are talking and how they are talking? These are all ethical questions. And next slide, please. There has been some progress because Finland introduced this programming in basic education. For example, National Audiovisual Institute has published these guides for media education and programming in 3 Sami languages spoken in Finland. The picture is actually from a Skolt Sami programming guide, which is the coolest thing I have seen for a while. And we have huge Sami media archives that has been used to train like automatic speech recognition tools. But the problem is that we are missing the text equivalent that we could actually use. Like we should have archives combining both, like the textual version of speech and the actual speech. So this development is quite slow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Waltz.
Okay.
Please.
So if you can pause. Okay, thank you, and thank you for inviting me to this panel, which is really crucial for the IGF as well. Okay, so let's kind of work. Just a couple of words about my background. So I represent originally Latvia's indigenous Livonian population. Next year we'll celebrate 35 years since official recognition in Latvia, and I've been active in promoting Livonian issues for past 30 years, but last 6 years I've been working at the University of Latvia Livonian Institute, which is specially established, and one of the key action areas that we work with is building digital resources and looking to approaches for extremely under-resourced and scattered data conditions, because the Livonian community is actually very small. We have less than 20 speakers in general, so we have to find the ways. And this is pretty logical that we have been also recently quite active in maybe more global initiatives, such as, and I wanted to present those instruments that currently exist supporting developments in the digital area for indigenous languages, which are, as you all know, International Decade of Indigenous Languages, and just last year there was ad hoc group, specially designated ad hoc group established on digital equality and domains, and where we sure are also participants. So there has been this year one very interesting initiative that went out, which is a global survey on indigenous languages. which is closing in a couple of next months, which provides both data or perception of what is the actual state of indigenous languages globally in the digital area, but also motivates those who participating to think about technologies and issues that they have on the path to the digital equality. So then in February in Paris, there a conference took place, Language Technology for All 2025, and from that conference grew out new, maybe the freshest UNESCO's initiative, which is Global Roadmap for the multilingualism in digital era. And this is the document that might define the future for languages, and especially for digital languages, because it envisions the future where equal opportunities entering digital domains is ensured for all languages. So currently, technology caters mostly those top 200 languages of the world, but the majority of the languages are somewhere in second row or in last row, as maybe some. So, and majority of those languages are indigenous languages. So this is precise. This is mechanism that in most work addresses the indigenous issues. Very shortly summarizing up the roadmap. So currently the roadmap, there is a roadmap consultation process, so you can easily look up at UNESCO's webpage and take part of it. But summarizing up, so there are three key moments in this roadmap. So there are input issues, output issues, and everything regarding process. By input issues, it basically addresses the ability to produce and obtain digital data, which is kind of a precondition for any language to enter. So before we start with technology, we have to start with being capable of producing anything in digital format, whether it's sound data for spoken languages or written data. And there are lots of analog challenges before that. And also lots of restrictions. So there are countries that, for example, do not allow digital usage of certain languages and or languages that simply doesn't have any writing systems or access to technology. So this is one part. The second part is outputs. That was what Shure was talking about. So if we have ability to produce digital data, we even have technologies like Sami languages, like Livonian, but we are not able to use them. We are not able to get them in, and not only on daily products, but also on cloud computing, on such products like games and educational instruments. So this is another aspect that we need to tackle. And basically what we want to achieve as the end goal is that technology is multilingual by design. So whatever language there is, any technology is adaptable to be used by users of that language. And regarding process, there are in the middle of that roadmap sits the idea that communities, language speakers, have to be involved in one or another way in all the stages of technology development. This is not only an issue about how you handle data, but this is also about how technology is developed. This is a question of whether technology is published, if it doesn't meet, for example, quality standards of the community, and many more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vals. Then Aili Keskitalo, please.
Päivi, thank you for the floor. And I'm here today as a Sami language user and as a mother raising now young women in a language that has often been pushed aside in public systems, in education, and increasingly in technology. But I'm also here as an advocate for Indigenous people's rights and human rights, believing that technology should serve rights and not markets. For us, it's not just about innovation, it's about justice. It's about the right to exist fully in our own language, not only in traditional settings, but also in emails, in voice assistants, in learning apps, and eventually in AI systems. The ability to use your own language, including in digital spaces, is essential for dignity, for cultural continuity, and for meaningful participation in society. Today, over 98% of the world's languages lack basic digital tools. And this is not a gap, it's a threat. It means that unless we act, our languages risk going digitally extinct. But we see the potential. We have heard about it today. Sami institutions, like the Sami Parliament's joint project, Mia Techno, are taking steps to develop language technology on our own terms, with open source tools, ethical frameworks, and strong demands for state responsibility. Still, we face barriers, and we have heard about them already today. Closed code from big tech, lack of funding, and not enough access to data to train the systems that we need. At the same time, as Lars Ailo already explained us, we must be careful. AI is not neutral. It can replicate colonial logics if we are not involved from the beginning, as rights holders, not just users. Language is power, and in this digital age, the right to speak your language must include the right to shape the tools that carry it forward. That is my message. Kiitos. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aili. And the last speaker before we approach the questions, that is Kevin Chan from Meta. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Sure, it's good to see you again. Maybe we just move to the the next slide, if you will. If we're able to, oh, there we go. So I wanted to start by just sharing that, this is obviously, and has been referred to by a few other people on the panel, obviously an important decade to be thinking about these very important issues. We are in the decade for Indigenous languages. And at Meta, we have been putting together some initiatives, working closely with Indigenous peoples and with UNESCO and other language partners to think through how we can help support with, in particular, some of our open source technologies with AI. And the previous panelists talked about a bit about sort of open source versus closed source technologies. Open source technologies effectively are ones where we have built some kind of AI model, but then we make it freely available to anybody else who wants to use it. And what that allows you to do is you end up taking the model, you can refine it, you can fine tune it, you can add additional functionality and features to it, and then you own what it is afterwards. And so we do believe, and I think as was previously mentioned, we do believe that open sourced AI technologies can be a very valuable technology in this context. So I really want to just leave maybe just three things to start the conversation. One is an initiative that we help drive in Canada with Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated, which is a governance entity up in Nunavut, which is Canada's sort of Arctic territory, to translate the platform into Inuktitut. We also launched last year an online language translator for 200 languages with the help of UNESCO and Hugging Face, which is powered by Meta's open source AI model called No Language Left Behind. And then there's also a new language technology partnership that we recently announced as well. So if we can move to the next slide, please. I just wanted to, again, just call out the initial, one of the initial projects we did, which was announced, I guess it was maybe 2 years ago. We launched, again, with NTI's help, and it really was a long, kind of period of collaboration together, because we wanted to do this properly. We want to do this in a way where we were welcomed by the community to do so. And of course, the community had the expertise, and we obviously didn't. We want to make sure that we did this properly, and it did take about 5 years. But we were very, very pleased to be able to bring at least the desktop version of Facebook in I think in a kind of minimal way, because I wouldn't say that everything was translated, but we had some key parts of the platform translated into Inuktitut. We were very pleased that the Governor General of Canada, Mary Simon, who herself is Indigenous and Inuk, she shared the good news on Facebook when we launched that day, and very pleased that our friends at UNESCO were very supportive of us championing and making and helping to drive this kind of initiative during the International Decade. Maybe the next slide, if I may. This is just a video. I think we can play it if you hover around the video, or maybe move the cursor. Oh, there we go. So it's a non-audio video. Just kind of shows you what this next initiative is, which is the No Language Left Behind online translator. Again, going 200 languages in terms of translation. It's text to text. And it does include many, of course, nowhere near comprehensive of the thousands of Indigenous languages that exist, but it does, among the 200, many of these languages are Indigenous languages. And you can see in the video, you select your origin language, you select the kind of language you intend to translate to, and you just put the text in, and there's another window below that gives you the translated output. This, again, is something that is open source, and so folks are able to, for example, access the model on places like GitHub, and then iterate on it. And so there is potential and opportunity to expand the language set to include other Indigenous languages, and you can do this freely. The technology is offered out to the world and to the community freely to do that. And then maybe the last slide. If I can, yeah. So this is the Language Technology Partnership, which is something we announced actually in Paris just earlier this spring in February. And it is a project that we're once again working with partners around the world on, and that is to try to really push the frontiers of language technology, in particular trying to help support low resource languages. And so what we have been seeking collaboration on, and we could obviously only do this with the agreement of partners, is to have made available different portions of data for languages to help train a model that we hope will be able to be quite powerful in terms of translating and in terms of transcribing different languages that are currently maybe not as supported as we would like. And so what we are looking for are partners that can provide 10 hours of speech recordings with transcriptions, or some amount of written text. And here we've specified sort of 200 plus sentences. And what we hope to do in the coming months with these partnerships is to, again, build new open source speech technologies. And of course, our commitment would be that if we are successful in making some of these breakthroughs in terms of translation and transcription, we would want to then make these technologies freely open to the global language community for them to build applications and further the research. And if there's interest in this, of course, please do feel free to reach out to me, and I will try to do my best to connect you with the right teams that are looking at this. You can also, of course, search for this online. I think there is a portal where you can learn more and submit information if there is interest. So thank you very much, and I'll pause here.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Then all panelists have introduced their slides, and we can go on to the questions. With over 7,000 languages in the world, it's clear that no platform can realistically support them all by themselves. Platform owners, constrained by security concerns and limited resources, often end up centralizing control over language availability, leaving many communities without access to their own languages in the digital space. How can you shift this mindset? And what would it take for them to open up the platform so communities can manage their own languages in the digital space? No questions asked. I was thinking that maybe Lars Ailo could give the first comment on this one.
Yep. So maybe I'm approaching this issue a bit differently from the other panelists, because I'm not building or I'm not interested in building the models. So and thereby not having that need to sort of have a platform to run this, but more the AI applications that will use the technology that is provided, hopefully, by this kind of platform. So my concern is more on the sort of the practical issues of being allowed to do this, and that we need to sort of address also the challenge of not just building the models, but also the applications, and especially the high risk that are useful in or will be used in education, health service, and other important public service.
Thank you very much. Then, Outi, what is your take on this question?
I have a short answer to this question, and I'm speaking from the perspective of, for example, basic education, where we see language as a human right, of course. So we should shift focus from a feature or localization or a liability towards that language is a human right, and it is that on platforms as well. So that strengthens the platforms when this is a philosophical question, so this is a philosophical answer, but we need to kind of start seeing the possibilities in this, and instead of and not talk about localizations anymore.
Thank you very much. And Kevin, what do you think about what Outi just said?
Can you hear me? I just had to unmute, I think. Sounds like it's okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you can hear me?
We hear
okay,
you.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I actually agree very much with what was expressed with the panelist intervention, which is that it may not be necessarily about the models themselves, but more about the application layer. There is, I think, again, going back to what I had mentioned about open source models, and there are many. Meta makes some, but there are other companies, obviously, that make them as well. This is, I think, going to be a very important vector by which Indigenous communities, people who are very committed to supporting, protecting, and promoting low-resource languages, this is a very important way, I think, by which you can actually see applications built on top, precisely because the models are free for people to use. And so with the right amount of training and work to build applications on top of these models, you very much, I think, can get models that are conversant in different languages.
Okay, thank you very much. I think due to time constraints, we go on to the next question. AI technologies still rely heavily on large volumes of text data, even as those requirements gradually decrease as technology develops. How can you ensure that AI is developed for indigenous and minority language communities in a way that keeps data ownership and control on linguistic data in the hands of those communities? And how can we ensure that AI-generated content is of such quality that it supports rather than harms the language and its speakers? Waltz, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I would probably take this question the same way I would have approached the previous one. So this is basically a mind shift, because well, there is this thing. So in order to use a language in whatever technology, we need large amounts of data. And that data, and especially for small communities, it's always hypersensitive. So you don't even need sensitive data to actually collide with GDPR, which is already there. What is actually needed is this community, that what I mentioned previously, sort of community involvement in all stages of technology, because we need community contribution in order to get technology running, but at the same time we need to make sure that technology that is produced, it is not harmful, it is ready, it corresponds for what the community needs, and so there is no other way around. And this is not done by legislation that much. This is really a mind shift, because we run, for example, with developers, even with academia, who should be kind of very well aware of issues. We run in those situations that we have to explain them that, well, why this is not working, like why this is not okay, and we do need mind shift in listening to indigenous people in whole stages of the process.
Thank you very much. Aili, would you like to say something?
Yes, yes, I would start with agreeing with Waltz on the demand of shifting of the mindset, and I think the shift will need to be from thinking about getting permission to through entering into true partnerships with the indigenous peoples, with the language communities, and so that the language users are not just passive users, but co-creators, and that would maybe build the trust that is needed for the data collection. Because it is, of course, about data sovereignty as well, well, the principles, when it comes to the principle often used in other contexts when it comes to indigenous people's rights, is the principle of free, prior, and informed consent, and that should be used also when it comes to data collection and the application of that data. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Time is running way too fast for us, so I think we should see. How is it, David? Do you have any questions from the online audience?
No, we don't have any online questions, so I think you were very, very clear. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the audience in the room? Yes, we have one, please.
Dear distinguished speakers, So I'm so excited because, this panel, respect the indigenous language and the cultures so much. And also we have Meta and to work with UNESCO and to protect the languages and the cultures. So I think there's a strong conflict between the data ownership and the way to collect the data. So if we want to help the large language models work well for the indigenous languages, we have to turn out the data and then fine-tuning the large language model. So the contributor become the users, unfortunately. So that is because the traditional architecture of the internet. So Meta have to be a centralized platform. So there's no way to solve this. But there's a new paradigm shift. A new protocol was invented fully. And this year, it will be triggered. So with data ownership, apply for GDPR, and also this data can be collected in a way that is anti-digital colonization. So I'm Henry Wang from Singapore IGF. I'm the founding member of the Singapore Internet Governance Forum, and also I'm the co-founder for Lingo AI. So Lingo AI and work with the founding father of the World Wide Web called Sir Tim Berners-Lee. So he invented HTTP, and our internet became centralized. Then he felt sorry about this. Then he invented a new protocol to correct the internet. So the new protocol called Solid. And the Lingo AI work with Solid and MetaLife, and we can collect the data with data ownership owned by all the contributors and the users. And the data sets can also be used by authorization, by permission, by the large language models companies worldwide or locally. So local data is important because on-device model can work with local data sets, become everyone's AI agent. It's your personal agent. So, and we are working on this solution, and it's also already available. For example, Sami contributors can all contribute data, but they control to part that they own by themselves. They can authorize to Meta, authorize to OpenAI, authorize to Norwegian large language model companies, but they keep the ownership and fully applied for GDPR. So I'm so happy to join this, as the attendees of this panel. So my question will be, so if we have such solutions, and if internet have such protocols, are you willing to try and to work and with this way and to help to protect the indigenous languages and the cultures based on the languages? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a few seconds. Yeah. Okay. The ADG would like from UNESCO would like to have some closing remarks. We might have time for one short question after that. We'll take the closing remarks now. So please go ahead, Taufik Jelassi.
Good afternoon to all of you. Excellencies, distinguished panelists, esteemed participants. As we come to the close of this important session, I would like first to express my sincere gratitude to all the speakers and participants for their substantial and insightful inputs which we had this afternoon. And I would like also to extend special thanks to Ms. Stensang, the Minister of Local Government and Regional Development of Norway, who has always showed us commitment, engagement, and support, especially in the context of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. The commitment and leadership of Norway has been instrumental in advancing our shared goal to safeguard and revitalize indigenous languages in the digital age. Also, I would like to express my deep gratitude to the members of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, members of the ad hoc group, for their invaluable contributions, especially to the global survey which took place on indigenous languages. I'm also excited to see the survey's findings and to explore how we can further collaborate with indigenous communities and nations worldwide to advance this vital work. The title of this afternoon session, It's Not Just the Tech, reminds us of a fundamental truth. Technology alone cannot solve the challenges that we face. And yes, indigenous language technologies exist, and AI holds transformative potential. However, if the systems in which these tools are, if the systems are not inclusive, do not respect cultural and linguistic rights, then the technology by itself is just another barrier, instead of fully playing its role as a bridge between communities and cultures. I think we heard this clearly today. The barriers to meaningful uptake of indigenous language technologies are not technical. They are structural, they are political, and they are ethical. From the spread of proprietary platforms to restrictive data protection regimes, to the persistent exclusion of indigenous peoples from digital policy making, these are the conditions that determine whether indigenous languages can truly thrive in cyberspace. At UNESCO, we stand with indigenous peoples to affirm the right to fully participate, to also have equal footing in digital space in their own languages. Indigenous communities must not only benefit from these technologies, they must be central to its design, its development, and its governance. Their knowledge systems, their worldviews, and linguistic heritage are not just valuable, they are essential to shape an ethical and inclusive digital future. This is the vision behind the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, not just preservation, but through empowerment. We are proud to support projects like the Mayan Language Preservation and Digitalization Project in partnership with Masterword. This project has created a new token glossaries, localized websites, and a universal Mayan keyboard, now empowering millions of speakers of this language across the Americas. Still, many challenges remain. AI systems continue to reflect linguistic hierarchies, data remain scarce or inaccessible, and indigenous women and girls face barriers in accessing and shaping these technologies. We must address these gaps by investing in open, community-driven innovation and in promoting gender-responsive digital inclusion. As a next step, UNESCO invites you all to contribute to the roadmap for language technologies, a roadmap which is now online for public consultation. Your contribution will help us shape this global process. In closing, let me share the wise words of Nelson Mandela, who said, quote, "If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart." End of quote. Let's work together to build a digital future that speaks not only to minds, but to hearts through linguistic justice, cultural dignity, and inclusive technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that's the end of the panel discussion. Time is out. Thank you all participants and the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you.